Assalamu alaikum students. This is your lecture 10 on water supply and sanitary engineering. In this lecture you will start with the next unit, that is purification of water or the water treatment. In this chapter you will study about the various processes that are to be done to make the water pure and fit for use. As I told you in the first lecture, that the water that we use should be pure and wholesome. And the pure water is not always available from the source. So we have to purify the water first before it's used or before it's distributed to public. For this, various processes or operations are used for the treatment of water, and these include sedimentation. It can be plain sedimentation and sedimentation with coagulation, filtration, disinfection, aeration, water softening, and other processes. You will have to study all these processes in detail. The other treatment processes can be fluoridation, defluoridation, demineralization, desalination, deferrization, and demanganization. The first process to be done is sedimentation. In sedimentation, what is done? The suspended matter is removed from water. It includes plain sedimentation, in which suspended matter is removed by simply settling down. And in sedimentation with coagulation, the coagulants or some chemical substances are added to water. It's used if water has large turbidity. After sedimentation, the next is filtration. As you know, filtration is the process by which small particles are removed, or we can say the particles that are not removed by sedimentation can be removed by filtration. Next process is disinfection. Even after sedimentation and filtration, some bacteria are present in water. These can be pathogenic, that is, disease causing bacteria. So, various processes by which the disinfection, that is killing of these harmful bacteria, is done will be explained in detail later. Next is aeration. By this process the taste and odor in water is removed. Then the water softening. In this process the hardness of water is removed. These were the operations that are used to make the impure water pure. But all these processes are not used together on the same water sample, because in some cases water may require only some of these operations. For example, water that is more turbid but less taste and odor, we can use sedimentation, filtration, but aeration may not be required. Now, what is sedimentation? It's the removal or separating out of the suspended particles from water, that is, those particles that are heavier than water, whose specific gravity is more than water. The suspended matter in water is due to turbulence in water. If the water remains still or at rest for some time, the particles settle down at the bottom. The same principle is used by the sedimentation tanks. What's a sedimentation tank? It is a tank which holds water at rest for some time until the particles settle down at the bottom. So we can easily remove the suspended matter from water. The sedimentation tank is also called sedimentation basin, settling tank, or settling basin. And the time for which the water is retained in the tank is called detention period or detention time or the retention period. The sedimentation tank can also be used as the storage reservoir sometimes. As I told you, this sedimentation is classified as plain sedimentation and sedimentation with coagulation. So, in plain sedimentation, the particles are removed by gravitational force. Plain sedimentation is the first process that is done, that is preliminary process. In sedimentation with coagulation, the fine particles are removed, that is the particles that are not removed by plain sedimentation. We can remove those particles by sedimentation with coagulation. Now, what is done in sedimentation with coagulation? The chemicals are added to water and the suspended particles make the flock by which it is removed, that is settled down in the sedimentation tank. And this settling down of particles at the bottom of the tank, it's called hydraulic subsidence. Now, this settling down of particles is related to the velocity of water. If the velocity of water is high, there will be turbulence and the particles will not settle down. But if the velocity is low, particles will settle down more easily, as there will be less turbulence in the water. Also, the large sized particles will settle down more easily as compared to the small sized particles. Now, the types of settling. The settling down of particles in water has four types. Type 1 discrete settling, type 2 flocculent settling, type 3 hindered settling, and type 4 compression settling. Now, starting with the type 1 settling, that is discrete settling. In this type of settling, the particles in water behave as individual entities. There is no interaction between the neighboring particles. This type of settling occurs when the concentration of particles in the water is less. That is, the concentration of suspended matter is less. Type 2 settling, or we can say the flocculent settling. In this settling, particles coalesce and make a flock. The mass of particles increases and they settle down faster. If the concentration of suspended particles is more, there is more chance of particles that they come in contact with each other. So they may easily form the flocks and settle down more easily. Next is the type 3 settling or the hindered settling. In this settling, the concentration of particles is in the intermediate range. So there are interparticle forces. These forces hinder the settling of neighboring particles. Here, when the settling occurs, the whole mass settles as one unit. The whole of the all of the suspended matter settle at the same time as one unit. Now, type 4 settling or the compression settling. The concentration of particles is very high, so the particles form different layers. They settle down one by one as one layer after another layer, and the compression occurs between the two layers. This was all about the settling of particles. In the next lecture, we will study about the sedimentation tanks and their types.